It begins on a quiet Saturday night, shattered by a desperate cut-off phone call to emergency services. A neighbor heard it too, the sounds of furniture being violently thrown around, but no one checked. No one knew that a young woman, full of dreams, was fighting for her life. The very next day, police arrived at her small Santa Monica apartment. What they found inside would shock them to their core. The distinct, chilling smell of gas hung heavy in the air. A burner on the stove was open, its pilot light extinguished. A candle still flickered nearby, a deadly fuse in a gas-filled room, posing a grave risk of explosion. And then they saw her, lying lifeless in her bedroom. Her body, already showing the grim signs of postmortem lividity, told a silent, horrifying story. She had been gone for hours. There were undeniable signs of a violent struggle, and investigators knew, right then, that they had just stepped into a nightmare. Her name was Juliana Redding. Born in Dallas, Texas, on October 25, 1986, Juliana grew up in a close-knit Catholic family, surrounded by love. Her parents, Patricia and Greg, and her younger brother, Patrick, adored her. From a young age, Juliana was remarkable, not just for her striking beauty, but for her joyful nature, her magnetic charm, and a spirit that seemed destined for greatness. She was at ease in adult settings, often accompanying her grandmother to board meetings. She loved working with children, even serving as a preschool teacher at her church. Juliana's upbringing was a whirlwind of activity. At South Point Catholic High School, she excelled academically and athletically, dominating in track, soccer, theater, and even golf, where she helped lead her team to a state title. Her teachers described her as kind, respectful, and natural leader. She had big dreams to be both an entrepreneur and an actress, blending her sharp intellect with her artistic flair. By 2005, she'd already performed with the Tucson Symphony and landed a role in an independent film. In 2006, the siren song of Hollywood called, and Juliana answered. She moved to California, settling into a cozy bungalow-style apartment on Centinela Avenue in Santa Monica, just minutes from the glitz and glamour of Sunset Boulevard. She studied communications at Santa Monica College, worked as a hostess in upscale restaurants, and picked up bartending shifts, always keeping her eyes fixed on acting and modeling opportunities. With her captivating looks and chestnut hair, Juliana was already making waves. Early in 2008, she was reportedly in talks for a feature in Maxim magazine, an opportunity that could have catapulted her to national recognition. But those dreams, those aspirations, were brutally cut short. On the night of March 15, 2008, around 10 p.m., Juliana made that chilling 911 call. The line went dead. A neighbor reported hearing furniture being knocked over shortly before. No one realized at the time that Juliana was fighting for her life. The next day, her mother, unable to reach her, grew increasingly alarmed. She contacted the Santa Monica Police Department, requesting a welfare check. Officer Scott Matt Goen was among the first to arrive. He heard Juliana's dog barking inside, but there was no answer at the door. Then he detected it, the distinct smell of gas. The fire department was called, and officers forced their way into the apartment. Inside, the scene was unsettling. An extinguished pilot light on the stove, a burner open, and that solitary candle still flickering. Signs that the apartment had been filled with gas for hours, a ticking time bomb. What they found next was even more horrifying. From the kitchen, Officer Goen could see into the bedroom. Juliana lay lifeless on the bed, her body showing purple discoloration on her lower limbs, a grim indicator of post-mortem lividity. The scene screamed of a violent struggle. Investigators documented signs of a fight and meticulously collected a wide array of DNA samples, from door handles, kitchenware, even Juliana's shirt. But one sample would prove to be the most critical, the DNA found beneath her fingernails. Initially, media speculation pointed to blunt force trauma as the cause of death, but the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office later issued a correction. The official cause of death was sealed, but the manner was confirmed to be homicide. And here's where the first chilling twist emerged. Forensic evidence indicated that the DNA beneath Juliana's fingernails matched Juliana herself. She had clawed at her own neck in a desperate last-ditch attempt to loosen the grip of her attacker, likely during a strangulation attempt. The public was stunned, left reeling by the loss of such a bright, beautiful young woman. As forensic teams combed through the violent crime scene, detectives quietly began reaching out to Juliana's friends and family, hoping personal insights could unlock the mystery. One name quickly surfaced: John Gilmore. According to Juliana's father, Greg Redding, this was the man she had dated on and off for 2 years, a relationship he had never approved of. Greg told investigators that John had a temper and a history of aggressive behavior. On one occasion, he'd reportedly kicked in Juliana's car door. On another, he'd forced his way into her home after an argument. Given that many violent crimes against women are committed by someone close to the victim, police wasted no time speaking with Gilmore. He admitted the relationship had been turbulent and confirmed they'd argued on the night of March 15th, the very night Juliana was murdered. But he insisted it was just a phone argument after Juliana got upset about him going out with friends. He claimed she hung up on him, then went out with a friend of her own. He stated he'd attended a house party miles away and exchanged texts with Juliana until 10 p.m., when her replies suddenly stopped. He even claimed to have gone to her bungalow the next morning, leaving after getting no response, though he did claim to see a candle flickering inside through the security gate. Suspicion initially focused on him, but Gilmore was soon cleared. Surveillance footage confirmed his presence at a store and 2 other locations that night. Several witnesses also placed him at a party during the critical time frame of 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. Then forensic investigators dropped a bombshell that shifted the entire focus. The DNA found at the crime scene belonged to a woman. With this stunning revelation, investigators began exploring whether someone close to Juliana, perhaps a jealous female acquaintance, harbored resentment. Female acquaintances were questioned, DNA samples collected, but none matched. The case seemed to be stalling, but detectives were quietly digging deeper into Juliana's personal and professional connections. And that's when another key figure emerged: Dr. Munir Wida, a wealthy Lebanese-born surgeon nearly 20 years Juliana's senior. Munir had grown up in Beirut, the son of a prominent doctor, and by the time he met Juliana in 2007, he was living a lavish lifestyle in Los Angeles. They met while Juliana was working as a hostess in a high-end restaurant. Struck by her presence, Munir offered her a job as an assistant at his medical clinic. She accepted, and soon their relationship blossomed into something more than professional. Juliana moved into one of Munir's homes in Beverly Hills, began driving a white Range Rover he gave her, and was showered with luxury watches, designer clothes, and vacations. He even offered to buy her a Lamborghini for her 21st birthday. Friends observed that Munir was infatuated, bordering on obsessed. He even discussed marriage. Munir also sought a professional alliance with Juliana's father, Greg, who was a pharmacist. He proposed launching a pharmaceutical business, Golden State Pharmaceuticals, with Greg as its director, but Juliana, still young, still pursuing her own dreams in acting and school, eventually felt overwhelmed. She ended the relationship and moved into the Santa Monica bungalow, a place she could only afford with help from her father. Though the romance ended, contact between Juliana and Munir did not. In fact, she had recently gone on a birthday trip to Las Vegas with him and some friends. However, the celebratory mood didn't last. Around that time, Greg informed Juliana of a troubling discovery. Munir was married and had 3 children in Lebanon. Feeling betrayed, Juliana broke off all contact. Despite the personal tensions, business negotiations between Munir and Greg continued until March 2008. But shortly before Juliana's death, Greg decided to pull out of the deal. His lawyers had concerns about the legality and structure of the company, and a letter was sent formally ending their involvement. According to their statement, the enticing compensation Munir offered was simply not worth the professional and ethical risks. Interestingly, Munir's legal team later claimed he was the one who ended the negotiations. Just days after those negotiations fell apart, Juliana was found dead. Naturally, investigators considered a link between the failed business deal and the murder, but Munir had a strong alibi. He was out of the country at the time of Juliana's death. And, crucially, the DNA found at the scene still pointed to a woman, not a man. Despite being cleared as a direct suspect, Dr. Munir Wida remained firmly on investigators' radar. The police strongly suspected that someone in his inner circle may have been involved in Juliana's death. They began a focused investigation into the women who worked closely with him, and one name quickly rose to the top: Kelly Sue Park. At 44 years old, Kelly was a real estate agent and a personal assistant to Munir in various business ventures. What drew the detectives' attention was a troubling financial pattern. From June 2008 onward, Kelly received over $1 million from Munir in just 18 months. Most notably, she had received a staggering $250,000 payment only 3 weeks before Juliana's murder. That amount screamed red flag. Police surveillance of Kelly intensified. In one operation, investigators collected a discarded cigarette she had smoked. DNA tests confirmed a chilling match. Her genetic material was found at the crime scene. On June 17, 2010, more than 2 years after Juliana's death, authorities made their move. Kelly and her partner, Ronnie, were arrested without incident in California. Kelly was transported to Los Angeles, where she appeared in court on June 21st. Prosecutors charged her with the 2008 murder of Juliana Redding, alleging she had entered Juliana's Santa Monica apartment on the night of March 15th and physically assaulted her, resulting in death. Her bail was set at $1 million, and if convicted, she faced 25 years to life in prison. Ronnie, though taken into custody, was released without charges. The media, long frustrated by the secrecy surrounding the case, soon uncovered another startling development. Just 2 days after Kelly's arrest, Dr. Munir Ouida disappeared from Los Angeles. He was believed to have fled to Beirut, though at that point he faced no formal charges related to Juliana's death. In October 2010, a secret grand jury hearing was held over 3 days to assess the evidence against Kelly. For nearly 2 years, the case had been shrouded in confidentiality. But in December, the Los Angeles Times obtained and published a transcript of the grand jury proceedings revealing critical details for the first time. Testimonies included statements from detectives, forensic specialists, and the medical examiner. They described the violent struggle inside Juliana's apartment and how the killer had attempted to destroy the evidence. According to prosecutors, the gas left on and the candle still burning were part of a deliberate plan to ignite an explosion and attempt to obliterate any trace of the crime. The forensic pathologist detailed the trauma inflicted on Juliana. Her body was covered in bruises and abrasions. Capillaries in her eyes had burst, a classic sign of strangulation, and the bones in her neck were crushed. Scratch marks under her chin were determined to be self-inflicted, made as she desperately tried to tear her attacker's hands from her throat. The DNA evidence was compelling, overwhelming. Analysts testified that Kelly's DNA was found on Juliana's skin, her clothing, her mobile phone, a stove knob, and even in a blood droplet on a dish. Her fingerprints were also discovered on various surfaces in the apartment. Adding another layer to the narrative was the discovery of saliva belonging to actor Brian Van Holt on Juliana's body. He was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony and admitted to having had an intimate relationship with Juliana, telling the grand jury they had been together the night before her death. Despite this intimate link, there was no evidence implicating him in her murder. Prosecutors believed that Kelly and Juliana had never even met, but what bound them was Dr. Munir. According to the theory presented, Kelly was acting as Munir's enforcer, sent to intimidate Juliana or pressure her father Greg Redding into moving forward with that pharmaceutical business deal that had so dramatically fallen apart just days earlier. Kelly, nearly 6 feet tall and physically imposing, was described by the prosecution as Munir's female James Bond. The 6-figure payment she received shortly before the attack and another large payment made to her relatives just prior to her arrest seemed too perfectly timed to be dismissed as coincidence. While the grand jury was presented with a compelling theory, some aspects remained unanswered, most notably how detectives had connected Kelly to the case after such a long period, and what truly motivated the violent escalation that led to Juliana Redding's murder. The prosecutor noted that Munir had fled the United States the very day Kelly was arrested, but with no direct evidence tying him to the murder, no communications, no financial trail ordering violence, no physical presence, prosecutors were forced to focus solely on on Kelly and the overwhelming DNA evidence found throughout the crime scene. At the trial, which finally took place in 2013, jurors once again heard a reconstruction of the final brutal moments of Juliana Redding's life. Police, forensic experts, and pathologists described a savage struggle, a failed attempt to trigger an explosion via gas and a lit candle, and an assault so violent it crushed the young woman's neck bones. The prosecution presented a chilling narrative, supported by DNA, fingerprint, and forensic evidence. They argued that Kelly had been sent by Muner to intimidate Juliana and possibly her father, Greg Redding, into resuming a failed pharmaceutical deal. But their case, though supported by science, had one fatal flaw. It lacked a clear motive and a complete narrative. Why would a woman with no history of violence commit such a gruesome crime? After more than a week of deliberations, the jury returned with its verdict in June 2013. Kelly Sue Park was found not guilty of the murder of Juliana Redding. The courtroom exploded in emotion. Kelly, now 47, broke into tears as the verdict was read. Her supporters wept with relief. But behind her, Juliana's friends and family sobbed in anger and disbelief. Some shouted at Kelly to go to hell and accused the jury of turning justice into a farce. The jurors left the building through a back entrance, avoiding the press, offering no public explanation for their decision. Kelly's attorney later stated that the prosecution had relied too heavily on DNA evidence, failing to establish why or how Kelly would be motivated to kill. He emphasized that DNA only tells you that someone's cells were present. It doesn't tell you why or how they got there. According to him, the prosecution never delivered a logical story that made sense to the jury. Juliana's parents released a written statement of their own, saying the evidence against Kelly was overwhelming and that their daughter had died at the intersection of a failed romance and a shady business deal. But the story of Kelly Sue Park didn't end in that courtroom. Just over 2 years after her acquittal, Park was arrested again, this time along with 12 others, all linked to the criminal empire of Dr. Munir Ouida. The charges were shocking: conspiracy, insurance fraud, aggravated assault, and conducting unauthorized surgeries that defrauded insurance companies of $150 million. Kelly pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors claimed that Munir, who had by then lost his California medical license, had allowed unqualified assistants to perform surgeries, misleading at least 21 patients into believing he was the one operating. Kelly was released on $1.5 million bail while the case developed. Though no new charges directly tied her to Juliana's death, the fraud case overlapped significantly with allegations from the murder trial, namely that Munir and Kelly had built a multi-layered, fraudulent medical empire together. Over the next 5 years, the fraud case moved slowly through the legal system, filled with legal challenges, dropped charges, and reinstated accusations. But in a twist no one expected, in May 2020, the Los Angeles Superior Court ordered that all charges against Kelly and several others be dismissed. The reason was sealed, and the presiding judge, who had been overseeing the case since 2017, did not publicly explain his decision. For Juliana Redding's family, it was another bitter blow. More than a decade after her death, no one had been held accountable. Her mother, Patricia, an artist who had passed her creativity on to Juliana, found solace in painting. Through art, she tried to reconnect with her daughter's spirit, keeping her memory alive in colors and brush strokes. Though justice in the legal sense remained elusive, the story of Juliana Redding continues to echo as a chilling example of how ambition, obsession, and money can converge in the darkest of ways, and how sometimes the truth itself, even when overwhelming, is never enough to convict. What are your thoughts on this perplexing case? Do you believe justice was served? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're as intrigued by these strange, dark, and mysterious stories as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more.